Hey guys, Survival here. So, you're all probably wondering, why no assessment video? Well, due to the restructuring of the scenario, this resulted in a scenario more suitable to a thoughts and discussion. So, I figured we'd just go over some key points instead. So the scenario had an introduction very high in detail with somewhat of a rather cliched story about a dystopian future. One of the first and most obvious issues the protagonist had is mishandling of information and his failure to follow standard operating procedures, which I can only assume existed, which would have told him what to do in such a scenario. All businesses, all organizations, even dystopian futuristic regimes all have standard operating procedures for almost every possible scenario. The next most obvious thing that happened was a failure to follow OPSEC. Instead of following standard operating procedures, he broke ranks and involved a person who he thought was a friend, and then allowed that friend to involve others. As a result, he was betrayed. He did, however, successfully escape and perform a 5-minute bugout, which was prompt, efficient, and successful. However, he was reliant on others. This resulted in many issues, including the identity kits being compromised. Further, having successfully bugged out with another friend who could be trusted, there was a major issue that arose, which was his supplies ran low. As such, they had to resupply. However, due to the tyrannical regime, there were major issues when it came to resupplying. As a result of being betrayed, the protagonist and his trustable friend had their families interrogated by the regime, which resulted in them being caught whilst trying to resupply. Further, they eventually had the realization that the regime doesn't care about facts. They simply wanted a patsy, someone to take the fall for their plans. This realization was had whilst being held captive at a regime black site. The resistance leader did turn out to be a traitor, as was found by the protagonist's friend, who managed to escape. Our protagonist, whilst still being held captive by the regime, overheard many regime secrets, which showed a lack of OPSEC on part of the regime, and was able to escape, but barely. The protagonist was able to meet up with his friend and relay this information. Finally, the regime catches them, because the protagonist did not get away clean. The protagonist appeared on enough surveillance networks and most likely had been implanted with a GPS tracker, allowing the regime to catch them. As such, the regime offers them the chance to work for them or to die. The protagonist and his friend both stand strong to their values, and they refuse to work for the regime, and 8 hours later they wake up in what appears to be their house, but in reality is more than likely a containment black site, a place in which they think they're safe, they think they've been let go, but in reality they're still being held captive. So at the end of the day, there were several things which were problematic, primarily failure to follow standard operating procedures trusting others who weren't known to be loyal, trustable friends, breaches of the principles of operational security, also known as OPSEC, which also resulted in people having information that was not absolutely necessary, which resulted in the protagonist and his friend getting caught after being ratted out by family and friends. The leader of the resistance, who everyone thought was on their side, actually turned out to be someone who was working for the regime. As a result, this person betrayed the protagonist and his friend, as well as the rest of the resistance. We understand that production quality was rather low and a lot of things could be greatly improved. We will aim to achieve this before attempting the next scenario. We do hope that our next scenario, whenever it happens, will pick up where this one left off and have a much better production quality. Further, any tips, feedback, or suggestions are more than welcome. Please leave a comment below and we'll do our best to address or incorporate it in the next scenario, whenever that may happen. The next content that will be coming out on this channel will be a whole bunch of bushcraft, survival, and prepping content, ranging from shelters, cooking, campfires, DIY expedient tent pegs, and other prepping, survival, and bushcraft related content. Please stay with us. We look forward to improving and we look forward to producing more content. Please remember to like and subscribe, and remember, stay safe in the bush.